I rise to speak today on behalf of the Greens in support of the Private Parking Areas Shopping Centre Parking Amendment Bill. I do want to start my remarks, Mr President, by reflecting on my own journey in terms of my working life and the importance of this bill. I actually got my first ever job when I was 17, having finished Year 12, and it was working in the retail sector. Indeed, I was working for Big W at Westfield in Marion. And I remember working night shift, packing boxes and packing shelves, how difficult it was for me to get home at the end of my shift. That was over 20 years ago now. And in fact, there was such an absence of transport that my dad used to come and pick me up late at night to make sure I could get back to the southern suburbs because you couldn't get a ride home. So it's pretty disappointing that decades on, so many of our state's retail workers find themselves in the position where they are often trapped, finding it difficult to get home from work, and then being slugged, increasing car parking fees. It's particularly disappointing when one considers what our retail workers have been through over the last 3 years of this pandemic, because we know that their work really is essential. These are the people that have been at the front line ensuring that our society could function during the pandemic. These are the people offering critical goods and services to our community. And they were often people copping abuse, copping unfair treatment. And what they've also been copping of late is an increase in their car parking fees. And that's outrageous. So for us in the Greens, we have always recognised the need for these crucial workers to be given free car parking. And that's one of the reasons why we're supportive of this bill. We, of course, recognise that we should always prioritise alternative forms of transport where possible. But we do acknowledge that travelling by car is necessary for some people, and that's particularly the case for retail workers. As I mentioned, there is often insufficient public transport available for these workers, and I hope that the government will take action to address that over this term of parliament. The Greens believe that all workers should have safe ways to get to and from work. My office has received over 530 emails in support of free car parking for retail workers at shopping centres. But we've also had a large volume of correspondence for retail groups also calling on better ways to manage car parking. One of the issues that we have been alive to in the Greens when the government first put this bill forward was the need to find a resolution for hospital workers. And whilst we were supportive of free parking being made available to retail workers in these key shopping centres for the reasons that I've outlined, we also felt that it was important that that principle should apply to our hospital workers, people who have also been at the front line of this pandemic and in particular during this really tough flu season. So we've been advocating for the government over some time to deliver a better deal for those workers. And I must say what the government have come back with is a really excellent solution. What the government are delivering, Mr President, is car parking for just $2.50 for hospital workers. Just $2.50. That's cheaper than a cup of coffee, Mr President. That's $12.50 a week. That's cheaper than a sandwich, Mr President. This is going to be cheap car parking made available to these workers in the middle of a cost of living crisis. As a result, car parking for hospital workers will be at the lowest level it has been at for more than 10 years. That is a really good outcome for these critical workers. But the other thing that the government have put on the table is they're going to provide free public transport on an ongoing level to workers that don't have access to a car parking permit. That is another terrific win. So members of this place will know, because it was the Greens who first filed amendments to provide free public transport and free car parking to these critical workers. The Greens who came out very strongly on this issue months ago, and we welcome the Liberal Party, of course, joining the call. But we've now achieved that outcome because the government have delivered this heavily discounted car parking and free public transport, and there's therefore not a need to pursue our amendments. And so I indicate that we won't be supporting the amendments from the opposition in that regard either. The other issue, I hear the Honourable Stephen Wade is interjecting, screaming out "backroom deal." Well, I make no apology for I do not make any apology for working to get good outcomes for all workers, particularly those in our hospital sector and those in our retail sector. That's why the Greens are here. The same could not be said of the Liberal Party, that, as we know, serve the interests of big corporations like Westfield. But the other,
Order.
Thank you,
Mr.
President.
Continue.
I'd say there's protection, but who needs protection from a...
Order. Order. No, Ms. Franks. No, Mr. Sims. Continue.
Sorry, Mr. President. I heard the Honourable Michelle Linsick interjecting with small family business. She obviously has a very different definition for small family business. I wouldn't describe Westfield as being one of the small family businesses, Mr. President. But just to go on to some of the other issues in this bill, one of the other issues that we were concerned about was that the fact that the bill was going to give local councils a role to play over enforcing these car parking provisions. And we had heard from local government sector that they did not actually want to be placed in that position, and indeed many would have a conflict of interest because they manage car parking. So that was an issue that we raised with the government, and I understand the government have taken that issue up and will be moving amendments to address that. So, given all of those concerns have been addressed, Mr. President, we are delighted to be supporting the bill today. I think this is a breakthrough that will be welcomed by not only our retail workers but also our hospital workers, as it brings to a close what has been a bit of a saga. And it means that heading into the Christmas period, those workers will have more money in their pockets, and that's going to be really critical as they continue to deal, as all South Australians do, with this ongoing cost of living crisis. But I'm proud of the role that the Greens have played to bring these issues to a head.